Thanks, Myles, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to see you. This is the EmpowerDis podcast, and I'm here, Ellen. I'd like to spotlight those people in our community that are doing the work and really kind of shedding light wherever they are. And it's a pleasure, Myles, to have you here today to speak about what you do with peak performers and who you are as a professional. I just wanted to welcome you. So,
Thank you, Ellen. I
yeah,
appreciate it. It's so good to be here, and I'm glad to be talking with your audience about what it means to live and work with a disability.
thank you so much. Thank you, Myles. So, as we get started, would you mind just diving into your background, who you are as a person, professional, and how you got started with peak performers and just in this disability job seeking industry in general?
Absolutely. I am a disability inclusion partner with Peak Performers. Peak Performers is a staffing agency that is a nonprofit. We've been around for 30 plus years, helping professionals with disabilities, neurodiversities, and chronic health conditions find meaningful professional employment. Most of the positions that we fill are things like administrative, accounting and finance, IT, engineering, and various different other jobs that you would find in an office place kind of environment. And we are a nonprofit that is also a staffing agency. So we specialize in doing a lot of temporary, temp to perm, and what's called direct hire placements in order to help government agencies and businesses advance their disability hiring and inclusive initiatives while also finding great talent at the same time, because those two are not mutually exclusive, even in the slightest.
Right.
The other thing that I would share right out of the beginning is that I myself am a person with a disability and have been for most of my life. I've been profoundly hearing impaired since I was about 1 years old, and I use hearing aids to be able to talk with you comfortably and be able to hear you. But you also might notice that if I'm standing closer to you in a crowded environment, that's not unusual. I'm usually standing a little bit closer. I'm usually watching lips. I'm also reading body expressions like a hawk, and sometimes, depending on the circumstances, I might just miss what you say and I might just have to have it repeated to me, or I might misinterpret what you have to say too. The biggest thing is that if you're ever working with me in an office and you say something to me and it seems like I'm ignoring you, I promise I'm not. I just didn't hear you, and it just went right over my head, so to speak. But like many people that are in your audience, I imagine disability was something that I came about to later in life and really kind of fully acknowledged as part of myself. I've been living with a hearing loss since I was about 1 years old. Most of my upper ranges are wiped out. And I had a very similar experience to many other people. And that was always my mom nagging me over and over again, saying, Miles, I just wish that I didn't have to yell at you all the time. And it wasn't until my that I really decided to actually go about getting hearing aids and assistive equipment to be able to help myself. And I realized it after a very crowded job search where I talked to 600 people in a day, and I got to the end of it and I'm like, I'm just so tired and I want this for me. And I also remember too very vividly after going to my audiologist and finally getting hearing aids, sitting down in my car and listening to classical radio and turning the radio on and being able to hear for the first time the piccolos and the high pitched violins in the orchestra, and tears just started coming down my face. I think that this mirrors the experience of so many other people with disabilities out there, in that there's all kinds of different expectations that are shoved upon them. There's all kinds of different things. Well, I want you to adapt for my comfort, right? And to be fair to
Right.
my mom, she was trying to
Right.
look out for me, but I still think that she probably could take a lot of lessons away from how she framed it and how she was able to encourage a culture of self advocacy and self accommodation to be able to be something that I benefit from, not just her. And I think that many employers out there will take a similar message away, in that accommodations are for the employees so that they can be happy, comfortable, and productive. It's not to make you look good. And,
Mm-hmm.
so I hope that that resonates with your audience right there. But what I would tell you as well, too, is that I have just one kind of disability. My other disability that I like to tell people about is that I do have sleep apnea as well. I'm part of a very large group of people. And for many years, I thought I was just weird. I thought that there was just something wrong with me. And it was a decade of living with sleep apnea and waking up in the middle of the night with what are called night terrors, where I wake up, sit bolt upright in bed, and scream my head off. I thought that there was just something wrong with me. And I hid
Okay.
it for many, many years. It wasn't until having an honest conversation with a dear friend of mine where I disclosed to him and told him about it, and he encouraged me to go for my own health to get looked after as look after back. So disability comes in many forms. Sometimes it's something that's observable about people. Sometimes it's something that's lurking in the background. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
something that we've been managing for many, many years. Wherever you're at in the disability spectrum, what I would tell you is that you're not alone. 26% of Americans have a disability of some way, shape, or form, of all various different levels of severity, as well as how much of a functional barrier it places in front of you. But you
Hmm.
are not alone. There are other people like you. And what I would tell you as well is that there's nothing wrong with you. Having a disability is part of the human experience. And the fact that we have accessibility and accommodations technology is a testament to how far our culture has come to being able to help support people at all stages of their life and all stages of ability.
You, Miles, that was wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. You brought up so many wonderful points, particularly what I like that you said. And I think, everyone needs to hear it is that disability can appear. It Disability is part of the human life, the human cycle. Our bodies or the way we function changes. That is a part of life. That and I think if one of these days, if we're able to understand that it's the body changing, it affects the life cycle. And if we have support throughout the entire life cycle, be it you experience something at birth, be it you experience something, you know, as an adult or accept it as an adult. And, and that you just become more comfortable with you and what you go through. And then you're able to share that. And if we have supports like that, um, yeah, we're on our way for sure.
You have such a more positive way of framing it than I do sometimes too, because, within the disability community, we have what I call the mafia threat.
Yes.
And that's kind of the sense of like, well, you're not disabled yet. Have you thought about future you, right? Like
I
disability is
know.
coming for you. It's coming for you at some, and it sounds vaguely to me like some kind of weird, ominous threat. And I don't think any of us mean it that way,
No.
but it's meant to build empathy, and it's meant for you to understand the importance not only for other different group of people that might be circling the periphery around you, but you. Disability is something that affects all of us if we live long enough, and it's part of the beautiful human experience.
Right. And our bodies function differently day to day. And your body will change. Things will be different. Things will, so it's almost like when we get to a point to realize that these supports that we need are really just like you need glasses, you need a handlebar here. It has nothing to do with your worth. It's just how we function. I think once we get to that point, it's like your body's going to function differently throughout your life. Don't you want support for every step of the way? Like, yeah. So even that, but it's true. It's true that slogan. I mean, I know they're trying to bring awareness, and I applaud them for that. But also, I think we're gonna get to a point where we don't have to draw people's attention through anger or through threats. Although right now I know that's where we're at, but I'm also hopeful that it will change one of these days too.
And I think one of
And
the things that
yeah.
stands out about you, Ellen, is that you do have such a positivity about you and such an optimistic outlook on not only the world, but also the employment and labor market for people with disabilities. I think that that is something that's really important because I can't tell you how often I go to job fairs and I meet people that obviously are experiencing barriers. they've obviously experienced potentially discrimination or at least very significant bias in the interview process. I recently shared an interview that I did with an autistic woman where she was told point blank to her face by an employer that I can't hire you because you don't make and maintain eye contact with me. And it's difficult when you hear things like that. It's difficult to remain optimistic, but I appreciate that you do and that you
Right.
do share that optimism because I think that is the best path forward is maintaining optimism while being realistic about the challenges that we face and the barriers that we must overcome, but also being optimistic because here's what I would share with the audience. HR often gets a bad rap. They're often painted as the bad guys, right? Like they are living. It's their corporate mission to put you down, but that is not the case.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are some bad actors out there, but the vast majority of HR professionals that I meet out in the field, they are well-meaning individuals that got into their line of work because they like to help people and because they're some of the most empathetic people that you will find
Hmm.
within a business setting,
Hmm.
but oftentimes they're put into situations where they might not know what to do. They might be uncomfortable. They might be making it up as they go along, or they might be so worried about protecting the needs of the business that sometimes they might lose
Hmm.
track of the individual. And to
Understood.
some of the people that are the most experienced within the field, they oftentimes fall back on processes over people. And I think
Hmm.
that that's where we oftentimes get trapped is when we fall back on those processes. And that's where you start hearing stories about, well, I'm an amputee and I
Hmm.
show up and I need an accommodation. And the employer requires a doctor's note for a person that's very obviously missing a leg, right? Like, that's where we
Yes.
start seeing
Yes.
process over people. And I think that it's
Exactly.
important as employers that we be positive,
Yeah.
that we be open minded, but we also never lose track of the people that we're trying to support.
Understood. And I second that for sure. It's like, yes, we do need the processes, but at the end of the day, it's looking at the person as a person. And I think if we remember that, we're going to be better off for sure. But I want to touch base on before I forget, because you said something very interesting, my friend. You said that you acknowledged your disability when you were in your 30s. And I myself, as a lead accessibility specialist and career coach, this is something that I come across a lot in my work as well, is that a lot of people are, especially since people are becoming more aware of diagnoses and what they need. I have a lot of students or clients that say like I was just diagnosed with ADHD, or I now have realized that I'm neurodivergent, or I've realized that I have, that I'm bipolar or what have you. So I would love to hear from you firsthand. How did you, because when I get that question, I sense there's a lot of fear
Mm.
in people because they seem like I have a condition now.
Yeah.
So this condition defines me. So I would love to hear from you, knowing that you acknowledged what you needed later. How did you process that? And what did you tell yourself, especially what we're talking about job seekers, because a lot of job seekers also have a fear of acknowledging it in an interview or even, while they're job seeking, even through networking events. What
Yeah.
did you do and what was your process in managing all of that?
So the first thing that I would tell you, Ellen, is kind of going back to your earlier question of who are you, Miles? So I'm a disability inclusion partner at Peak Performers. I've been working here for 8.5 years, and I can tell you more about my career journey later. But I think just as important part of me is that I'm a man that's deeply devoted to my wife and to my cat at home. I am a zealot for board games. In fact, I have four that are under contract right now that should be coming up for print pretty soon within the
Fantastic.
next couple of years. The industry moves kind of slow. I am also an absolute 112% coffee snob to the point where I roast my own coffee and I have a home espresso maker every single day. I'm one of those snobs, one of those people that will tell you, I really don't want to use that Keurig machine because it doesn't taste quite right to me. Just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you're only a person with a disability. Oftentimes, employers may see that. And I think that we sometimes internalize that and tell that to ourselves. We start letting disability play too much a part of it, especially if it is a relatively new diagnosis, or especially if we feel like it is the root to many of the different barriers and challenges that we have. So, what I would tell anybody that is listening right now is that you are so much more than your disability, and disability is only a small part of you. But I also think that it's important to acknowledge that part of you that does have a disability. And by the way, let's talk about the full spectrum of disability and let's talk about kind of how it may affect people. You'll hear me when I say people with disabilities, neurodiversities, and chronic health conditions, because I think that generally, when you think about the full spectrum of the ADA, it
Mhm.
breaks down to those three kind of large categories of people that might self identify. So, for example, you might say that, oh, I have ADHD, but I don't consider myself disabled. Technically, you are under the law, but however you choose to identify, I think that that's valid. But again, that's just the way that your brain functions. And I'm sure that you are so much more than just your ADHD. And it's also very possible, too, that you might have co occurring conditions. Say, for example, due to your ADHD, you lost the first couple of jobs that you had right when you first got onto the labor market. That happened to a friend of mine named Ryan Mayer, who runs a very fun podcast called and is specifically a neurodiversity ADHD job coach named Ryan Mayer. Be
Nice.
sure to follow him because he has some really great insights too.
I will put
But
that, yeah.
he talks about how, due to those workplace traumas, he actually developed a variety of different what are called co occurring conditions. So that meant that he actually developed depression and anxiety disorder as a result of his ADHD and some of the barriers that he faced within the workplace. But when I talk to Ryan, he's talking about building Legos with his kids and he's talking about being a family man. He's talking about how much religion is an important part of his life. These are valid, right? Like, you are so much more than your disability, and don't let anybody ever tell you that it's the other way around.
Mhm. That's fun. I love what you're saying, Miles. I learned more about you. And I want to hear more about your games probably
Mhm.
after this podcast. And I want to start talking about that with you because Stephen Sondheim will forever be one of my heroes. And yeah, I would love to hear more about that and the coffee too. I want to hear what you recommend for coffee. But I love how you said, and we've had this in our previous conversations. Definitely, it does not define you. It does not, it's just a part of your life that you discovered right now. And like you said, you've probably been functioning because this is probably not something that just happened overnight. This is
Yeah.
something that it's just defining some sort of trait that you've had for a long time. And it's just how you function in the world. It's not who you are. And I was talking to many of my colleagues who have a disability, even in my own work. And all of us said, I have never defined myself with my diagnosis. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not going to say, hi, I'm Ellen. I use a wheelchair and I use a wheelchair and walker. I might say that in an email to give you a
Mhm.
visual if needed, especially if I'm making a reservation at a restaurant. But I'm
Mhm.
going to say, hi, I'm Ellen. I live in New York. I, you know, I I live in New York and I also coach people. That's how I think about myself. So how you see yourself and what you love and also sharing that with others is what they're going to remember. Like Miles, I have to say, I love how you put what you need, but this is only to enhance your work. It's not, it doesn't make you work. you know? It
Yeah,
doesn't it's your passion that drives it, and this whatever support you need is going to make you better. So and is
absolutely.
going to make you more productive for the company. So,
And I would
yeah.
say that there's probably many people that are watching that are afraid to request an accommodation. They are terrified of it because they don't want to be treated any differently. They're
Mhm,
probably wondering, how do I even go about the process? And they may be thinking to themselves, well, I guess I don't really need it because I've been kind of working around it all this time, right?
mhm,
There's many different reasons that we deny ourselves an accommodation. It doesn't have to
yeah,
be the employer. A lot of times we are denying these to ourselves. But the biggest thing that I would tell anybody that's thinking about this is it's important to look after your future self, not only your present self. The value that we gain out of disability self disclosure is a certain amount of legal protections that are there to support us, but it also can help explain certain ways that we interact with the world that, if left unvoiced, they might cause people to perceive us differently. And I can see it should not be this way, but different is often a dirty word. I like to tell employers that if you're still using in the year of our Lord 2026 the word culture fit, I think that
mhm,
you need to think a little bit harder about exactly why you're denying employment opportunities to people. Because culture fit oftentimes can be a way to screen out people that are different within your organization, whether that's different because they're a different gender, or they're different because they have a different skin tone, or they worship a different god, whatever, right? Like, difference, it's important to recognize these kind of biases that we have. But it's also important for people with disabilities to realize how they might be perceived, and I think that there is a lot of value in self disclosure early and often as a way to add context, so that people can understand how to engage with you. Because most people, they do want to do the right thing, but they just might not know how, and they might be operating from positions for fear. And I know it's a little bit uncustomary advice, but it might even come out to where you are disclosing in the interview, especially if you might be sharing that interview booth with an elephant, so to say, the elephant in the room.
yeah,
Somebody notices that there's something different about you, and there are ways that you can do it to not necessarily disclose the exact condition that you have, but be able to give the employer a little bit more context so that they can understand how to engage with you, or understand exactly why you may be interacting with them in a particular way. And I'll give you an example. So, hi, Ellen. I'm so glad to be meeting with you. I'm so excited to be considered for this employment opportunity. I just wanted to give you a heads up that I struggle to make and maintain eye contact during the course of the interview. Please don't in any way interpret that as me being disinterested in this particular role, or not interested you in a person. I just personally struggle with being able to make and maintain eye contact. But I still am listening to everything that you have to say, and am extremely excited about this employment opportunity. So, I've just said something about myself. I've said something that they might notice, and hopefully, maybe that encourages the employer to say, "Thank you so much for telling me. I appreciate you going out on a limb with this." And maybe they'll have some follow up questions. It's up to you whether you want to disclose at that point or not. But at the very least, it doesn't leave the elephant in the room. And when it comes to accommodations, a lot of times it's, again, looking out for your future self, because what I don't want you to fall into the trap of is disclosing at the moment that there is a performance problem, because too often I see a cycle that happens where somebody's been living and managing their non-observable disability for many, many, many years in the professional workplace. Say, for example, they're taking medication for their depression disorder. Then all of a sudden one day they have a traumatic life event, and or their medication needs change, and
mhm,
where they were, quote, functioning before, all of a sudden now they can't get out of bed and miss several days off in a row.
right,
Pretty soon they're maxing out their PTO, they're requesting FMLA. Their employer is getting a bad taste in their mouth because they're showing up for work every once in a while, and it seems like
mhm,
they're always off when they are.
Hmm.
And then finally, right at the point where the employer is just about had enough, that's when they request their disability accommodation because they
Yes.
realize that it's necessary. And while there are certain legal protections out there, just think about what that's doing for your career and think about what that's doing for you. If you had talked about that earlier in the process, if you had advocated for yourself, it can look as simple as having a conversation with your boss to say, hey, I wanted to let you know that I struggle with my mental health sometimes. It is something that I've been living with and managing very successfully for many, many years. And I consider it integral to who I am, and there's no fixing it. However, I just wanted to give you a heads up that I periodically experience challenges with the mental health where I may need to go onto a new medication or I may need to seek out therapy. And I would be seeking out an employer that would be able to support me in this journey because I promise that even through these episodes, I am still committed to you. It just takes me a little while to get back to normal.
Hmm. Hmm. Understood, understood. And I completely hear you. And it makes sense. It makes sense to clear the way for yourself. Make sure that, if you need that extra support, the team can assist you. And I love what you said, Miles. But I know our audience, and just in case we have those naysayers, right? And we all
Sure.
have them even in our head. So, playing devil's advocate, if you will,
Yeah, yeah,
a lot of job seekers say, I don't have problem disclosing. It's asking, it's the timing factor because
sure.
it's like, if it's a phone, like, when do I disclose? You know,
Yeah.
is so, and because you're the guest, how have you experienced it, and when do you disclose, or when do you feel comfortable disclosing?
I'm going to give you two answers here.
Sure.
So if you want the HR approved answer, the HR approved answer is that you disclose the moment that you have an employment offer,
Hmm.
because at that point in time you have full legal extension, full legal protections that are available to you.
Okay.
You also want to disclose in a form that is backed up in writing so
Hmm.
that HR loves documentation. They love having notes, and this helps give them that, and it helps protect you to the fullest extent of the law. I personally am a fan of disclosing early and often, perhaps even in a second or third interview, perhaps the first interview too, depending on if it's observable, right? Like, and
Hmm.
keep in mind that observable might look different for different people. It's not just showing up for the interview in a wheelchair. It also might be somebody that takes a phone interview but speaks with a stutter, right?
Hmm.
You know, if you don't speak to that stutter, so to say, the employer might regard you as anxious or nervous, or maybe in the worst possible scenarios, they might perceive you as stupid or inarticulate. And simply by saying to them, you may notice that I communicate differently and that I communicate with a stutter. I appreciate your patience. It takes me a little while to be able to verbally get the words out. Please don't in any way interpret this as me being less qualified for the role. I think that you have a lot of power there to get ahead of the situation. And I think too that disability is oftentimes it's not perceived this way, but I think it 100% is. Disability is a unique skill and unique qualification that other candidates do not have. They don't have it.
Exactly.
We don't think about it, right? But, when it's not exactly like people are putting on a job description, must be disabled to apply, right? Like, that's
Right.
very
Right. Yeah.
you wouldn't get that, but think about it, like, when you think about innovation, when you think about resilience, when you think about all the things that you go through on a day-to-day basis to be creative and to be able to work within a world that was not built for you, that brings a lot of value to the company.
It
That
does.
brings a lot of value to your manager. The fact that you are resilient, the fact that you can create solutions, the fact that you are not constantly looking for a pre-prescripted route, that you are able to craft your own. Now, if you're able to get ahead of that and be able to tell the story, that can work well for you in the interview. And I'll give you an example too. If I were disclosing in the course of an interview to a potential employer, I would tell them right away, "Hey, Ellen, I'm so glad to be interviewing for this role. Just to get it out of the way here, I wanted to let you know that you may notice me standing a little bit closer. You may notice me reading lips as well too. That's just because I have a profound hearing impairment in the upper ranges. Most of my upper ranges are wiped out. I just wanted to let you know that so that you can communicate with me as effectively as possible. I would tell you though that actually I've been living and working with this my entire life. It has not impeded my career in any way, shape, or form. It just makes it a little bit challenging in some noisy and congested kind of conditions. And in fact, actually, I worked for 6 years as a high performer within Apple in a B2B sales environment. And one of the things that made me successful actually was my hearing loss, because a lot of times when you do stand closer, when you read people's lips and their facial expressions so intently, they interpret you as more invested and
Mm.
building more rapport with them in a much faster way. So, in many ways, this has actually given me a competitive edge within the B2B sales environment.
I love how you spun that around, Miles. You told them of your value and what your trait, what positive thing, and what how you can actually help their company with who you are. I myself have done similar
Mhm.
before coaching. Well, I used to also be a contract recruiter, and when I would go on these interviews, I would say I would say, you know, I have a disability, but actually me thinking like I would do it the way you do it, but I tend to put the put the positive on top.
Mhm.
So what I say is, I have a disability, but actually this was a positive feature for me being a recruiter because I'm always thinking about the underdog and I'm
Yeah.
always thinking about what other abilities, what other strong suits come different from different populations, from
Mhm.
various populations. So because of that, I was able to have the highest DEI pipeline for my team. And because of that, we were able to succeed in that metric.
I love that.
So just by showing them how your mindset going actually adds to things. Like, I know it doesn't seem like I'm looking at the camera, but because I'm listening intently to what you're saying, I can pick up on what is being said underneath and
Yeah.
what a person truly needs to know.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I
go
I
ahead.
agree. There's ways that you can spin it. There's ways that you can get positive,
Exactly.
and keep in mind that oftentimes we may assume the worst possible scenario. We may assume that somebody's going to instantly regard us as other, different group, scary, right? Like that's all the kinds of negative self-talk that we have that goes through our head about what it might look like if we were to self-disclose. But keep in mind that, the person you're sitting across the table from is human, and it's very possible that they may hear that and they go, "Thank you so much for telling me, Ellen. That's such an incredible story. And I actually have a niece or a daughter or a cousin that also uses a wheelchair. So thank you so much
Exactly.
for telling me that. I'm curious to learn a little bit more. Like, how has that affected your experience?" Right. And then lean into it, right? This is your story to tell.
Exactly. Yes, and let people know that you're human and let people know that what you bring to the table and really what you bring to the table wherever you interview, wherever you network with, it's your personality, right?
Mhm.
It's your personality. What you've been through with your disability, how you function in the world is a part of it. But like we said with previous questions, bring your whole self into the conversation, you know? And they're going to connect, you know, because not to go too much on a tangent, I'll just say one more thing. A lot of times when I was interviewing as a special ed teacher, one question I would get is, how do the kids react to your wheelchair? And
Mm.
I just said, they love it. And that just, I mean, I said other things beyond that, but just by saying they love it, it
Yeah.
just shifted the energy right away. And I say, because I'm talking at their level and I'm inviting them, I'm saying, do you have any questions? You can ask me anything.
Yeah.
And when they know that you're open to it, that you see it like they see it, all of a sudden there's a dialogue, you
Yeah.
know? And that just dissipates any sort of stigma, any sort of, yeah, it really does help when we connect on that human level, for
I love
sure.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about us all day, but I would love to tell me a little bit about peak performers and what
Sure.
it is. And yeah, tell me a little bit about that. Even Miles, how you got started with that
Of
company too.
course. So I got started with Peak Performers about 8.5 years ago. Like many people, so there's two different kinds of people out there in the world.
Sure.
There's people like my wife. She when she was 12, 13 years old, she decided that she was going to become a children's librarian, and she has stuck with that career path her entire life.
Hmm.
And she pretty much everything has she's ever done has been reinforcing that. And if I were recruiting for a senior youth librarian role and I saw her resume, she would be the very first person I called, not because she's my wife, but because she just has all those qualifications and she has a very clear career path. That's fantastic. There are many people out there like that, but I think that there's many other people that are learning what they want to do as they're venturing down that path. There's many people that change their roles, that change their interests, that try something out and they don't like it, right? I'm one of those people. I very distinctly recall that I graduated in 2009 with a creative writing degree in rural Ohio, which is not
Hmm.
exactly a great place to have that degree seeking out career opportunities. And I remember that every single job that I applied for required at least 3 years of experience for entry level positions. And that was challenging, and I got my very first job based off of an HTML course that I had taken in addition to my college studies that I didn't even finish. So I got my first job as an email marketer sending out spam emails to hundreds of thousands of people a day. Don't hate me. I promise it gets better from here. I worked in a small windowless office sending out hundreds of thousands of spam emails every single day. And I absolutely hated it. And it was a bad match for my skill set because I am a people person. I'm a talker. I am a storyteller, but I am not particularly gifted at going in depth through code and picking out little details. And I remember that one day I sent out the wrong email
No,
to 250,000 people, and
no.
needless to say, I lost my job that day. Pretty soon, I was on the streets. I was unemployed along with the rest of all of my other friends, too. And I was seriously questioning what's my value in the world and what's my career path going to look like from here. I started my own business. A brand called Mr. Good Name, which was meant to create online presences and manage reputations for small businesses in rural Ohio. And my business failed spectacularly. After me and my business partner knocked on over 1,000 different doors, we just realized that the market was not there and that nobody was ready to buy our services. And so we closed shop a year later.
Uh-huh.
And then I worked in a toy and game store. And then from there, I went and worked for Apple. I worked for Apple starting off as a part-time salesperson and then moving later into a B2B sales kind of role that was specialized in, say, for example, you have a coffee shop and you're going to need a couple of iPads for your employees to take orders, as well as like an inventory management system. And I realized that I was good at thinking about systems and thinking about nuanced, complicated ways that technology may interact within the world, and I was good at building relationships and being able to support people. And then my time came to an end at Apple. And, I often say that you don't quit your job, you quit your boss. And I think that that is very true. You oftentimes end up leaving the people that are no longer supporting you and that no longer have your best interests at heart. And that's when I found Peak Performers. I started off as a technical recruiter looking through resumes that were 6, 8, and 10 pages long for
Mhm.
very complex keywords that were related to very specific kinds of technologies. Again, not the best skill set for me, but I learned a lot from that position, but then I moved into more of a B2B role and spent many years actually responding to what are called requests for proposals or RFPs, which are basically government documents to be able to solicit for various different services or products that government needs to buy through a formalized process.
Mm.
And then later on, in the midst of all of this, I started actually giving what were called disability moments during our weekly staff meetings, where I sought to provide some kind of unique perspective about the lived experience of individuals with disabilities within our community. And lo and behold, this actually ended up turning into a full time role as our company realized that they needed to have a subject matter expert that was on staff that could offer a variety of perspectives, not just on hearing loss. I think that one of my fortes is actually talking about a variety of different disability lived experiences and being able to quickly jump through the lens of another person and offer perspective of how they might be perceiving the world or how they might be able to be better supported. And then that kind of grew into general overall community engagement and marketing, and ultimately interfacing with corporate customers that are what I call disability curious, air quotes there. They
Mhm.
are curious about what it means to hire somebody with a disability. Maybe they're a little bit afraid about it, but they're curious and they want to learn more and they want to do the right thing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's really kind of where I found my professional stride. So anybody that's at the
Fantastic.
beginning of their career journey, or maybe they faced a career gap, maybe they lost their job like I did, maybe they were fired because they made a mistake. They found out that they were not a good skill set for their job at work. Pick yourself back up. These are part of the learning experiences. You will learn from it. You will get better. You will learn to recognize maybe some of your own gaps and maybe where you could stand to use some room for improvement. And a lot of times, some of the best jobs that we have out there are the ones that we ultimately forge a path for ourselves.
Mhm.
And there are many kind of jobs that are out there like that because employers value authenticity. They value a variety of different lived experiences. So you are more than your resume. And a lot of times, the best path and the most straightforward path is the one that's crooked and has some gaps in it and takes a little while to get there. But if you are patient with yourself, you will get there because you do have value in the world. You do have value in the employment world as well, but you have to be patient with yourself and you have to be along for the journey as well. As to peak performers, we are a staffing agency that's been around for over 30 years now. Last year, we put over 800 people to work, and 75% of those were individuals with disabilities, chronic health conditions, or neurodiversities. And part of our nonprofit mission is specifically to level the playing field. So, the way that it works is that if you are a job seeker right now, please go to peakperformers.org or just Google Peak Performers. Look us up that way. Go to our job board, search for any jobs that we may have that are in your area. If you don't find a job that is a perfect fit for you, which is entirely possible, the labor market's a little bit dry right now, just to be honest
Mhm.
with you. You may be struggling to find a job. Well, to be honest with you, from a staffing perspective, it may be a little slow for us right now, too. We still want to see your resume anyway, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. And again, we want your resume to be able to consider you for multiple future opportunities. The way that you can do that is by joining our talent pool off of our webpage right there. That submits your resume and indicates to us that you're open for whatever may come down the pipe. When you engage with our recruiters, they're going to ask you, first and foremost, are you qualified for the job? They're going to be screening you based off of ability and how much you align with that job description. And then at the end of the day, they're going to ask you if you have a disability and seek to offer a little bit more context about what it means to have a disability. Try to be truthful with them, try to be honest, but also take that as an opportunity to request those accommodations that you may need or specific ways to set up the workplace that could work for you. No, not everybody's going to get remote work. I know where your mind's going, but keep in mind, there are many different ways that you can flex this around. There are many different creative solutions that you can come to that can help ensure a variety of different people with a variety of different kinds of disabilities can work successfully within our workplace too. So our recruiters are going to ask that. If you get put out on assignment, we do offer health, dental, and vision insurance after 60 days of employment. It's the same insurance coverages that I get, and we try to cover just about everything you may come across. Like right now, we have multiple different employees that are undergoing cancer treatment, and we want to make sure that we're supporting you during what could be very, very dark hours during the course of your life. And we also offer things like an EAP program and even a retirement savings program too. So we try to be as much as possible like a normal employer, but we also recognize that a lot of people may be seeking full time jobs and they may not want to temp with us. Keep in mind that a lot of times when you seek out a temporary agency for a temporary job, that's a way that you can try out a job or try out a career path in a low risk kind of environment. And a lot of times, too, it can be an opportunity for you to get a little bit of experience in that career field and try to level up within your own way. Along the way, we are there to support you, and we just hope that we can either help you get a job directly with that agency or help you build up your resume so that you can go on to bigger and better things beyond peak performers.
No, I love what you said, and I love this. I love the mission of Peak Performers. It's been a pleasure. Full disclosure, we collaborate together. Our works collaborate together, and it's been a sincere pleasure to get to know Peak Performers. I think to have this stepping stone available for people, and also as an introductory experience, because some people may be returning to the workforce during a career break, or, your diagnosis, you need some time to recruit. You need some time to get to know who you are and how you best work in the workforce, while also showing people your value.
Yeah.
So I think what Peak Performers offers is a good stepping stone. And also to know that, yes, peak performers can't guarantee you a role, but definitely if you're able to make it through the interview process, of which peak performers also, supports you with accommodations.
Yeah.
If you are placed somewhere, peak performers will also work with the company that you're starting with and talk about accommodations to make sure that that transition for you works well. So, I really want to say that what Peak Performers offers is amazing. I also want to say kudos, Miles, with your own story. I think you bring to light a lot of things that are important. We have this kind of like, well, even baby boomer, I would say, mindset of the first job you get is your job. And there's this unspoken culture attitude that I will stay with this company forever. And if I don't stay with the company, I am devalued.
Mm.
In this country, you're going to have 10 different careers at least during your lifetime, if not more. And also, all those experiences that you have build you up. So when you make that managerial role, you know what it's like when you have support and when you don't have support. So all those experiences just make you better at your next opportunity. And the more we understand that, I think the better off we'll be. Hopefully we'll come to that realization. But
You know what I would leave your
yeah,
audience with, and speaking of disability moments with our staff meeting, I got to run to one shortly
yeah,
here. But the thing that I would leave your audience with is that it doesn't matter how many times you've been told no. You only need one yes.
you only need one. Yes,
And I hope that carries them
exactly.
on forward. Thank you very much for having me, Ellen.
Thank you, Miles. This has been a pleasure. Thank you,
We'll catch
everyone.
up soon, Ellen. Thanks so much
Yes,
for having me. Take care.
yes. Take care. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.